Welcome to the Peerless YouTube. I am Caitie North, and today is the second class in our eye mini-series. We're going to be doing an iris study today. So we have a blue, a brown, and a green eye. So I hope you enjoy, and I can't wait to see your paintings.
All right, so to get started, we're going to start with these three irises that I have drawn out for you. And if you would like to trace them, they are available. But basically, I've kind of made the round circle of the iris and the round circle center of the pupil, and then just different kind of shapes and things to kind of create the depth and different things that I'm going for. And one of my favorite tutorials I saw, I can't honestly tell you where it was, but it was years ago. And a lot of the brown and green eyes especially seem to have like these layers in them. I don't really know the best way to describe it, but like you get these little strings and they look like hairs almost. They're really weird, but to get the depth of that back piece and then the front piece and the strings on top, you can draw little bean shapes all the way around the center of the pupil, and it kind of gives you a guide of what is going to be that like dark in shadow kind of weird kind of stringies and then the top stringies, and it kind of makes them for you. So that's what I've done on the brown eye, and the bottom one, will be the green eye. But yeah, if you kind of would like to draw them yourself, you can kind of play around with those kind of circular shapes and adding that ring around the iris and those kind of weird little bean shapes. So now we're ready for our first wash, and I absolutely love to put an orange or even, like an orange, sometimes a red base to brown eyes, because I feel like they have so much depth and color in them. And if you were just to do like maybe just the mahogany, it does have some red in there, but I feel like if you start with an orange, the next layers, they're just going to get more of an intense, vibrant eye. Even though, it's brown. I think brown eyes are absolutely stunning, and one of the things that I could do, most brown eyes have a ton of colors and flecks of light and even gold and all sorts of things. So putting down that original kind of orange tone in there and then adding some brown to make sure you get some of that depth. Okay, so the blue eye, we're going a little bit more simple, and you want that first initial wash of the light blue, and then while it is still wet, I am doing a ring around the outer edge of the iris with a dark blue and letting the water in the light blue mix with the dark blue and kind of pull it towards the center. And that's just that wet on wet technique and letting the water decide how much it's going to pull into the light blue, but it's going to give a really nice natural kind of really soft blended. And then yeah, I wanted to add a little bit of a kind of like a green fleck, so I'm just kind of playing around with it. So I just kind of want it to be in that one little top area. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to let that one dry, and we're going to work on the next eye. So for the third eye, we are going to be doing a green eye, and I'm going to be starting out with a pretty lime green. It's the light green in the Peerless pack, and it is definitely very vibrant, but I want it to be a very strong and super bright initial wash, because that is going, those colors are going to be kind of left alone a little bit, and those are going to be the strings of light that are coming towards the pupil once it is more finished. So the lighter you make this first wash, the lighter those strings on the top surface are going to be. So don't make it too light. I kind of mix in a little bit of the sky blue, get kind of these kind of aqua colors in there, and yeah, get that super bright. You could throw some yellows and just get a couple different colors and tones, but still staying with a relatively lighter wash. Once that top iris is dry, it is time for its second wash, and I'm going to be using the Mahogany Brown. And then if you did your pencil lines dark enough, you should still be able to see those bean shapes, what you want to do is start build the shadows of those darker pieces. So kind of outline them and fill them in a little bit with the mahogany brown, and kind of just see where all of those pieces are, trying to keep a tiny section between the two beans still that bright kind of reddish orange brown on the top, because you still want that to pop out. So make sure to leave enough space that those little strings are still visible. Okay, so for the next wash of the blue, you can see that inner ring that I made for the blue right next to the pupil, and I kind of made it kind of like a starbursty kind of, like it's a round, but it kind of comes out in little points. I am using a very transparent amount of the sky blue, and I'm just kind of filling in that very center one and adding the tiniest little bit of lines towards the center, and it's just kind of giving it that like realistic muscle. It's like, how do I mean eyes are kind of technically muscles, so they have stress rings, and they have rings where they pull in, and it kind of like, you know, they're all weird. Eyes are like kind of gross, but like also gorgeous all at the same time. And I could not tell you what the difference of those little strings and different things are, but the more weird details that you add, you're like, that make you look at it like, oh, that looks so weird. But those are usually my favorite eyes, and I feel like they're like the most stunning when you see somebody in real life that has an eye like that. So to make this one, just kind of a very light, kind of transparent amount of the blue, and you're just going to go around and add little lines all the way around towards the center of the pupil, making that inner ring that's a little bit more of that darker blue, just slightly different. So when it comes back, when you look back further, you get that difference and that, you know, different depth and definition, and it just looks, you know, interesting next to each other. And then for the green eyes, similar to the brown, you're going to find all of your little peanut shapes, and you're going to fill all of those in with a darker green. And you can add a couple different colors and some blues and some greens, and you can fill it in solid with the paint, or you can use different little lines. That's all personal preference. And I would say too, if you're going to be, anytime you make these irises bigger, you can get more and more detail. So obviously they're not like by any means too small. Like they're still like, you know, maybe a couple inches, maybe a couple inches each. So we can get quite a bit of detail, but you know, the smaller the pupil on the page, the less detail you're going to be able to get. So if you want to do like a ginormous one, you'll be able to get a ton of detail. But right now, just kind of filling in all of those peanut shapes, and then leaving that edge on the outer ring and that kind of around the peanuts, because those are going to be those little hairs or strands that are highlighted that make it look super, super funky and cool. We have finished the first and second washes, and now we are going to be doing the black, which will be our most defining textures and details, and also the pupil on the inside. So if you can see my palette next to my painting, it's kind of hard to see, but I used a piece of packing tape, and I just put it down onto my palette, which is a watercolor paper, and I want to be able to get a puddle of black and not have to keep picking it up, and I want it to be a very saturated, heavy black without having to use the Water Reservoir brush, because now I'm going to be moving to my extra small detailed brush. But having that packing tape there is a good kind of cheat when you don't have a plastic palette and you don't want the paint to absorb into the watercolor paper as much. So now you just want to add all of your darkest details inside the iris and kind of more defining those bean shapes with a darker color and another layer. Any kind of little lines coming out from the center pupil to the outer rings, and just working through each one of your eyes and however much you would like to do. And then also I will be adding some eyelashes, I think. I'll kind of check back and see exactly where it is in the video, and I'll do a little bit of explanation. But using that puddle and that extra fine detail brush for the eyelashes. Right. So one of the things you're going to want to start doing when you're painting eyes is to look at really close up what eyelashes look like, because they look kind of creepy crawly, you know, kind of spider legs. I don't even know. They look kind of crazy. So and then a lot of different eyes have kind of light flares and reflections, and so I'm kind of showing you as I'm going in here that like that brown eye to the left side of it was a light flare. But in the reflection of it is the eyelashes from the bottom of the eye. So that's why I'm kind of doing them a little weird. But, you know, there's like, whenever you're seeing a round shape, and especially when it's kind of covered in water like an eye is, there's going to be a light reflection. And the only way to kind of make sure, like, there's little cheats you could do where you could do like that little half moon shape I make on that bottom one. And, you know, just weird little ones that you kind of can get used to that are a general light flare, but they're going to look the most realistic if you have a reference photo that you're looking at and you're like, oh my goodness, like that is like a perfect square reflecting in the eye, but it's curved to the roundness of the shape, and then it's reflecting the eyelashes that are on the opposite side of it. Like, it gets funky. Like, you can look at eyes and paint eyes forever. So that's why I'm kind of just going around and doing a couple different weird things and throwing some light flares and leaving that space, you know, on the edge of the brown empty, because I knew that was a light flare too. And yeah, just kind of making them their own individual personalities and eyes. So once you've played around with some of those eyelashes and getting those definitions the way that you would like, is now we are going to start doing the white highlights, which is the water on top of the surface of the iris itself. And which is also very handy when you have a reference photo, that you can really kind of get an idea of what's going on and where you want to put things. If you kind of want to follow along with me, I am making a kind of square highlight up next to those eyelashes on the top of the brown and throwing in a few dots around the center of the iris and the center of the pupil. And then, yeah, just kind of going around and highlighting where those eyelashes were forming. And I will check back in a minute and then kind of do an explanation of each iris as I am doing it. The blue iris, we are going to do a extra small, tiny, as fine as you can get it, details, little strings going around the edges towards the center of the pupil, and then one of these basic little half moon flares, which is a good kind of, easy, as long as you have that little bit of that flare in there, kind of gives it that brightness that you need. And then my favorite of the green is to kind of, I think I actually zoom in too. So I'm going to add this heavy kind of bigger bean shape on that like right hand corner. But what I'm going to do, which is so fun, is I'm going to outline all of those little beans that we've been working on and so trying to get so detailed and depth and deep in those colors. And then I'm going to be adding a bunch of white lines and squiggles coming out from the beans and from towards the center of the pupil and then out to the outer rings. And let's see, I'm gonna zoom in right here. You can really see the depth and texture that you can get with the white highlights and how it makes all of those little areas pop. And just kind of give it those strings, just like those reference photos that I gave in the very beginning. And how weird they get. They get so weird. They make me so excited, and I love it, and I think it's so fun. And you guys all kind of know me now too, that I am obsessed with my white highlights. And yet again, this is one of my favorite things to do with the white highlights. That works amazing with irises. So yeah, so we're getting pretty close to the end. And I'll just kind of let it go through to the end. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and hope you are able to look at a few irises and be able to paint them yourself. So eyes also have rings going the other way. I have heard from an eye expert that they're stress rings, but I also think they're kind of cool too. And they just add to, the funkiness of each eye. And yeah, different light flares and highlights, and that is pretty much done now. So here are my completed irises. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and share with your friends, and we will see you next time.